So this is the major setup that we would use for preachers. You've probably seen Steve or Todd use this setup for when they do a Sunday service online, or Mike doing his weekly fresh bread. So for this setup, we recommend using the Sony a7 III. It's the best camera and it's got the best lens for the job. So typically this is what the setup would look like from the outside. So we have 4 camera lights. 2 of them are a warm yellow color and 2 of them are the bright ones. Now the bright white ones I tend to place at the back. They are just for kind of lighting up, meaning that you don't need to up the exposure too much on the camera. They do the work for you. And then the warmer ones, the yellow ones, I put to the sides just so they are closer to the human face, so that you get a bit more color on the human face. So if we go up to the camera, we can see that currently the receiver for the Rode microphone is plugged into a little microphone socket on the side. And that's the one I am currently recording onto. That's what you're hearing my voice off at the moment, basically. If you need to know how the receiver works, you can go back to the video that explains how to use the receiver with a phone. It's pretty much the same principle. However, with the phone, you had a gray end and you had a black end. Whereas with the camera, it needs a black end and another black end. So just watch out for that, otherwise it won't work, because the gray end is built specifically for phones, whereas black to black is just camera to the Rode. It's built that way. The other thing you'll notice is this at the top. This is a monitor so that the speaker can actually see what we are seeing at the back. However, what we have found with this is that if the speaker is looking at themselves in the monitor, their eyes tend to look a little bit cross-eyed when this is happening. So the speakers can see themselves up there, but it tends to make them look a little bit cross-eyed and they're not looking directly at the camera. So always encourage the speaker to look directly into the lens for the best picture, basically. A few tips to note: that if you still aren't getting enough brightness from the image, you can change the exposure by toggling this up here, and this will manually adjust the exposure for you. The more exposure that you ask the camera to give you, the frame rate will actually drop. So you always want to produce light that isn't from the camera. It's light that is around the camera. So this is why we use the big fancy camera lights. And if you've got some nice natural light coming from the windows, that's great. We haven't found that too much in the past, so we've just stuck to the camera lights. The other thing to check is, at the moment this camera is recording the audio, so I have actually hit the record button up here in the top right corner, and you can tell it's recording because it's flashing over here. So rather than having to run to every camera every time to check if it's recording, they all do the same. They all flash when they're recording. And then always switch it to the film setting up in the top right hand corner as well. Make sure it's not on a photo preset, but it's on the film option. And the last thing that's always worth checking is checking the frame rate. So the settings on these cameras shouldn't change, but if you can get it up to 30 frames, that is the best. That is the best quality for most of the stuff you want to do. You don't really need to get it higher than that. You can set it to 24 frames. I wouldn't recommend it because it's a little bit too jagged. It looks a little bit fresher and a little bit nicer if it's 30 frames. So just to check that, you can go over to menu and then recording settings, and that's where you can toggle between the different frame rates. So you want 30p, 50m.